Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, Lake Diamonds. We are back again. Another Tackle Tuesday. Of course, depending on what day you might be watching this, it might be Tackle Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And I want to do one more Joe Simons, Lake Diamonds. And that, my friend, is for you on YouTube who said, please stop doing Simons like diamonds. It hurts my sphincter, is literally what he said on the YouTube comments. So
don't encourage him.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I do appreciate your comments. And I think it'd be fun to do a whole podcast just reading funny YouTube comments. I mean, that one alone was really funny. And of course, as soon as someone said this is like painful and it's tighten up my sphincter or something, then a lot of people started jumping on the bandwagon. It was actually pretty funny to read. So we appreciate it. You guys gave us a big smile.
We definitely need to do that. We have a lot of ammo in those comment feeds.
Yes.
And that'll make for a really funny video.
YouTube's one of the worst in terms of this. You know, people don't use their real names, whereas Facebook, it's in most cases is a real person, and they verify their email and they're legit. And with YouTube, man, it's the Wild West. It's crazy. All right, so while you guys talk, let's talk about what we're doing. Today, we're going to be talking about best summer lures, a.k.a. baits. Luke hates when I use that word, but best summer lures. Is that what we're going to do today?
Yeah, lures, the top lures for going out there catching redfish, sea trout, snook, flounder, it's the core inshore species that we most often target, and just, the lures to use during the summer periods. Every season is a little bit different. Different bait fish come in, the prevalence, the size, of the forage changes, and so it's smart just to think about it when you are making your lure selections. And so I'm sure we all have different perspectives on exactly what works. Because the good news is you don't have to have a specific bait or lure. Like, it's not like if you don't have a certain one, you're going to get totally skunked. But in most cases, if you have the right one for the right conditions, it'll just help increase your overall results. So, Joe, you putting this on Facebook?
Yeah, I'm trying. So if you guys are listening on podcast, you're wondering what I'm doing or watching on YouTube, I'm trying to put this on the FB right now so we can have some hopefully some people chiming in with some questions and some funny feedback. Let's see here. See if this puppy works. All right, it says going live. If you guys can check your phones and let me know. It's setting you up webinar for Facebook Live.
Yeah, so see the icon.
Oh, baby, let's do it.
I think we're hot.
And so for those of you guys listening, introduce the rest of you that are on here.
I'm Luke Simons. I'm the fellow co-founder along with Joe of Salt Strong.
Co-founder, not co-flounder, dude. You've been fishing too much.
I'm
heard an L in there. Is that a silent L?
Yeah, I haven't eaten lunch yet. I think it's just my hunger talking. But yeah, co-founder of Salt Strong, and official title is Chief Fishing Addict. So I've always wanted to be a CFA. I was in the financial realm, and now I'm a CFA, but just a different one than planned originally. But loving every second of it.
So what do you think would be harder to get in terms of a designation?
Chief Fishing Addict, of
course. Yes.
Way more years of practice and
true. That's true. And just getting kicked in the stomach and the jimmies and all the pain and the humiliation, the years of missing all those fish to become an expert.
And Luke, the chartered side, there's certain levels, so you have to designate your level of CFA credential here.
Yep. Yeah, working on it. Just like that's the good thing about fishing. There's never I'm finished, right? It's a forever learning and growing sport.
There you go. Wyatt, what you got?
So I am Wyatt Parcell. I'm the Salt Strong Insider Club Director. If you're an insider, you see me in the club all the time. I'm also one of the coaches for Salt Strong. I cover the Carolinas, a little bit of Virginia as well, that upper East Coast, the marshes, things like that. That is my specialty. So I'll be sharing some knowledge for you guys today on that stuff.
Very good.
Wyatt's been all over the beach here recently.
Yeah, I'll share some on that as well.
Little beach bunny.
Very good. My name is Mark Goodson. I'm the current COO of Salt Strong. Really, my focus is on the tackle side of our industry. We got a lot of neat and exciting, fun things ahead of us, and don't really want to divulge a lot of that just yet, but really big on the tackle side, rods, reels, tackle, lures, baits, and yeah, to the light.
And basically Mark has helped us really build our ideal business, which is, you know, focus on what everyone wants, which is tackle. I mean, you could see behind me tons of rods and reels, and we've got all kinds of stuff here to show, because this entire episode is on lures. And so it's, you know, giving our audience what they want, and then ultimately, you know, giving them in the back end, or selling them what they want, giving them what they need, which is the education, right? We hear it all the time where, you know, someone is really just struggling. You know, maybe they grew up fishing, they're getting back into it, they're finally got their first boat or kayak, and it's just, they realize it's tough, and there's so much water out there. They're like, what do I do? And their first thought is, oh, I need to get all this new tackle and all these new rods and reels. And we're not against that at all, but really you need education, right? You need the whole 90-10 rule, which is something that we just talk about over and over again, because it's so critical. And we're going to do a whole podcast on that coming up, a follow-up, because there's been a lot of good questions on that 90-10 rule, about basically eliminating 90% of the water and just focusing on the 10 where all of the fish are, which is literally happened to us every single time that we've gone fish, and every time we've gone away from it. It's one of those good reminders of why you focus on it. So Mark has been an amazing asset. And speaking of tackle, let's get into it. Luke, what's different about summer than any other season in terms of lures? Are you doing anything different? I know you always got a little slam shady, baby, but what else you doing?
Yeah, so as far as lure types, I mean, I always prefer soft plastics throughout the years, really, or throughout the season and the years, really. But I just prefer them because they're just so much more versatile. So if I'll start with a certain size based on the season that we'll talk about. And then if I see that my assumption is that, you know, okay, I was assuming that the bait fish are going to be around 3 to 5 inches, and I see that they're smaller, then I could just literally just tear off the tail, throw it out there, and now I have a smaller profile that the fish will more likely hit without having to like go to my tackle box, retie. So they're just so versatile. I love them. The times that I don't like them are when the darn puffer fish are around, and I can't tell you how much money they cost me, because puffer fish, it doesn't matter what soft plastic you have. If puffer fish in the area, they're going to totally wreck your gear. And so for that reason, I always have some hard baits as well. And so like that's like the high level macro stuff. But as far as the summertime specific, the bait fish are starting to get a little bit bigger. And so like the 4-inch range is really my assumption going into it. And if I get out there and I'm seeing bigger baits, then I'll go up a little bit. And if I'm seeing smaller baits, then I'll go down. So summertime, I generally like lures in like the 4-inch range. Wintertime smaller, so now is the time where I start bumping it up a size, personally, and that's across the board of all types.
Cool, good stuff. And everyone, if you're watching, I've seen some comments come in. Let us know what. Whoop. Oh, I got the volume on here. Let us. How do I stop this thing? Jeez, I can't even see the comments without having it play.
Turn your phone volume off. I'm watching the comments, Joe. I'll get that.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, so hit us up on comments on some of your favorite lures, questions you have. So that's interesting. So are you using like that Z-Man Slam Shady, the Diesel Minnow Z? What are you using right now?
I'm still using the 2.0. I'm using both, but I do have some of the 4-inchers. I've been using that, but the two. So this is the 3.5-inch one, right? And plus the jig head, that's going to be about 4 inches. So this has been a solid profile. And another thing with summertime, I just love topwater lures. First of all, it's a lot of fun. It's just like nothing more thrilling than seeing a big snook or a big redfish or a gator trout coming up and just totally smacking a topwater plug. And so for that reason, I don't do topwater much in the wintertime. Like topwater has been excellent during the twilight periods only. So I don't do it in the middle of the day in the summertime. But if I'm fishing close to sunset or sunrise, like an hour or two, before or after sunset, sunrise, these topwater baits have been awesome. So like I've actually been testing this one out. This is the Badonkadonk. It's a weird name. It just looked cool. Like
it's not a weird name. It's an awesome name.
Yeah, it's different, but it looks cool. Has that big eye. And it came with trebles. I don't like trebles. I replaced all of mine, as you'll see here. I don't use any trebles anymore. So it's all single hooks. It's safer for me, safer for the fish that are going to be released. I take Otis out a lot. It's safer for him. So I do singles for everything, and I really haven't noticed a decrease in fish strikes, or sorry, hook sets, except for the small fish. Smaller fish do have a harder time getting hooked with the singles.
Which is good. You don't got time for small fish.
In my opinion, that's a pro, because I've had multiple times where smaller trout or ladyfish are up there smacking it, and they keep missing, and then that'll attract the attention of a bigger fish, and they see it. It's an easy decision for them. They're going to go steal an easy meal, and I've had multiple good fish because of that. So
what have you found have been the best replacement hooks as inline hooks?
They're all about the same. I mean, the owner, I've used the BMCs. BMCs and owner are the two that I've used, and I don't have the pack, but we have the owners on our shop now. The owners seem to be, they're my ultimate favorite. The owner, I like the dark ones for whatever reasons. The BMC, I had some silver ones, and they just rusted up really fast. I found that the owner ones seem to last longer. But again, they both work. Like it's not like a get one and you're going to fail type thing. So that's what I've been using. And this, first day out with this puppy, I caught 2 overslot reds. One was 34 inches, and it came up and just totally smacked it. It was a ton of fun, but they all work. I've done a lot of tests with Skitter Walk. I still haven't published the Skitter Walk and the Super Spook Junior. Not a single day did I not catch something with both of them. So they both worked. Some work better than others in certain conditions, but they all caught fish.
What are you waiting on? Why don't you publish it? I want to see it.
That's a lot of videos. I was I went out 4 or 5 days, and I was doing 3 casts. 3 casts with one, 3 casts with the other, and did it for 3 or 4 days, and it's a lot of footage. Coming up soon.
Cool. Wyatt, what do you got? I saw someone Benzino put in fish bites, and I know you just did a review on that.
That's right. That will be up today. So in terms of what I've been doing a lot of beach fishing. So I've been trying out some different stuff. I tested, using some frozen shrimp, but if you guys want to get into the artificial side, not worry about having, a stinky bucket of shrimp, get some fish bites. Right now, the best flavor out there is to have sand flea, because in the late spring, summertime, that's when those sand fleas are out. And that is the primary bait on the beach. Pompano or running, the drum are cruising the beaches. If you're down in Florida, Snook will even hit them, surprisingly. So get the sand flea flavor. Just put them on one of these kale hooks, and you can put a 3-foot hook rig out. And if you want, you can use some flip-flop floats. I'll have a video on that as well. But just putting some fish bites out right on the beach, depending on the tide. You can put them in that trough between sandbars, and you'll have a lot of different species that you can hook up using those. Those are technically artificials, but they're a synthetic bait that's packed with, a bunch of scent. Fish really, I found, can't tell the difference. And I've had just as good a days using, frozen shrimp as I have with fish bites. And using sand fleas. And I'll have another video comparing how well an actual sand flea would measure up to a fish bite. And in my opinion, I would use the fish bites sand flea over an actual sand flea, because the fish bites will last a lot longer. Now, if you want to use an artificial lure off the beach, there's a lot of Spanish running right now. Did a video really recently about gotcha plugs. Or you can use diamond jigs. I prefer the gotcha plugs just because you can put a little bit more action into those than you can the diamond jig. Obviously, diamond jigs, you can cast them out further. But, just launch them out with some light tackle. You need, 30 to 50 pound monofilament, and you can get on some Spanish, some bluefish really easily. And if you're lucky, you might even get on a king. I've seen some kingfish that have been caught off the gotcha plugs lately. So really easy selection of artificial baits off the beach. Those would be my top 2 right now.
Cool. Marky Mark Funky Bunch, what you got, dog?
A couple of things. Number one, I kind of agree with everyone. I like to use larger baits this time of year, number one. Joe and I kind of laughed about some stuff, what the industry calls a 4.5 inch bait. On the tournament side, on the bass side, we like to round everything up and just say 5-inch swim bait. So I'm using larger swim baits. But something that hasn't really been discussed yet in this call is the summertime enables us to fish more aggressively. So now the power side of me, the power fishing side of me, where I like to really, really pull my lure through the water column very fast, now's the time of year to do it for me. So if I want to cover a lot of water, chunk and retrieve, and really rip the water, column up, now's the time to do it. So using a 5-inch kind of a swim bait, something a large paddle tail. I just have a blue and black one so you can see it, because of my camera. But in the slam shady pattern, the white color pattern, the larger soft plastic swim baits are go-to for me.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that as well. And one thing that that is extremely important around, at least around here, I'm in Tampa Bay now is where I've been fishing, but really all up and down the central Florida coast and over in Texas as well, where areas that we have a lot of seagrass. Summertime is when the seagrass is most likely going to be floating on the surface. It gets cut up or whatever. The hotter the weather, the hotter the water, I should say, that will generally cause the seagrass to be floating up on the surface. That can be a nightmare if you're not ready for it. And so going weedless, having everything weedless. I'm talking about the knots as well. Weedless knots, weedless lures. If you're not going weedless, you're going to have a lot of frustration, especially if you're fishing in the evenings. Like evenings are my favorite time to fish in most cases. People are off the water. The bite will really fire up right before dark, but there's been a lot of seagrass. That's another reason, again, why I like the single inline hooks. If I'm throwing topwater, I took a neighbor out the other day. He was using treble hooks, and every single cast he was coming in with grass. Granted, the single hooks still catch some grass, but not nearly as much. And what I've been doing, if it's really weedless, I'm going with weedless jerkbait. This is our leprechaun. This is what I've been using.
Show me the goat.
Yeah, if the grass is really bad, this is, in my opinion, really tough to beat, especially up in the shallows. Get a weighted hook, get a jerk shad, rig it weedless. See that hook point is digging into the actual bait. So it'll go right through the weeds. You will not get snagged on anything. I use an FG knot for the braid to leader. Nothing snags on that. There's no tag ends that are sticking out. And then the non-slip loop knot to the actual lure itself that has the tag point pointing back toward the bait. So very, very important. It sounds like it's not a big deal, but if you're out there and the grass is bad, it'll be a huge deal. And when you make the switch, you'll understand.
So that's FG knot to like the cray loop knot. Is that what we have it? Is that the one you're using?
The non-slip loop knot is the true name of that knot. But yes, just make sure that your tag ends are pointed backwards, so that when you're retrieving it, that tag end isn't standing up. Because if it's standing straight up, or if it's standing like towards the rod, you're gonna snag every single piece of grass.
What do you got against Lefty Cray, dude? What do you got against him? Give the man some props.
If people will look it up, it's the non-slip loop knot.
Another thing too that Wyatt and I were talking about off camera before we got started, this is another time of year that you can actually use a lot of noise. So a lot of the rattling style baits, and Wyatt will have some that he can hold up. But, the big time of this year, the noise isn't a factor as much as it is during the colder months, where you would reduce the size of the rattles internally in your bait. You're not so aggressive on your retrieves and your action that you're putting into the lure itself. So lures can be loud, lures can be fast, lures can be large this time of year. And it really is conducive to my style of fishing.
I know Maxwell Beers had said, what's the most versatile saltwater lure? I would say, and it depends on where you are, obviously, and what you're targeting. But what we cover for the most part is the inshore saltwater species, redfish and speckled trout, snook and flounder, and now tarpon, sheep's head. And I would say and actually right below it, I saw Tyler says slam shady hands down. I would agree. And we use that for a reason. It works. It simply works. The color is proven to work. All of the books, if you look at all the fishing books, talk about the power of having the white/pearl with some type of flakes that are going to attract a little bit more of attention, like the gold and silver, which is why we created and trademarked Slam Shady. That is something that we own. That's why we did that first round with Z-Man, and we have more coming back for all those of you who have been asking. The 5 inches are there. I'm going to talk about that in a second. They're in the store right now. We'll have the 3 and the 4s out soon. And of course, we have the 3.5s. That is our go-to lure overall in terms of being most versatile. But there are times, just 2 weeks ago, we were down in Boca Grande, and I was going to be walking the beach. I didn't want to have a lot of stuff with me. I wanted to take one rod and one reel, and I didn't have to be retying or worrying about little junk fish biting my Slam Shady off and destroying it. So guess what I took? A white bucktail. And in that case, that was going to be my go-to, and I caught fish that day just using a white bucktail. So a lot of it is going to depend on the application of where you are. Now, had I been out in the kayak or boat and had a tackle bag with me and had a little bit more stuff, I probably would have been more likely to do a Slam Shady, or I don't know, maybe even try your little fish bites there, Wyatt. But I found, for at least where we are in Florida, for those beach fish, for snook and the mackerel cruising along, and pompano and jacks, a white bucktail or a white Slam Shady on a pretty heavy jig head, because you wanted to be hitting the bottom with the waves and all that going along. And it's pretty unstoppable and pretty versatile. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, paddle tails. I mean, if you ask most people, paddle tails, it's really a soft plastic paddle tail lure, and
Or swim bait for the layperson.
Yeah, some people call them swim baits, whatever. But it's just we're like any predator fish that eat bait fish, which is pretty much all of them, will take this. And the good thing is it doesn't require anything fancy. Like, you don't have to have 20 years of retrieve experience, because the paddle tail does a lot of the work in the water. This tail makes a pretty good amount of action. So all you have to do, you can give this, like Shauna caught her first, Joe's daughter Shauna, when she was like, she was probably 6 that time. We were letting her cast it on a grass flat. She caught trout all by herself. All you do is just cast and retrieve, and you can catch plenty of fish. Obviously, doing some switches, and for all who buy this, we have a mini course on exactly how to rig it and use it to really maximize your results. But even if you don't know the details, you can just put a basic paddle tail on either a weighted hook like this for the shallows, or just rig it up on a jig head for the deeper water, and you can catch an absolute ton of fish all season long. It's in my opinion, that's the most versatile type of lure by far.
And that's the reason the Slam Shady, just this one color and one paddle tail, we're now up to, I think it's 64, 65 species, and we have them all documented. And now we have them all documented, like with pictures and everything. That's coming out very soon. But you can go to saltstrong.com and just do a search for Slam Shady. It's at the very bottom of the of that rigging post. If one of you guys even want to post it in there, it shows all the species. And it just, to your point, Luke, it's proven to be probably the most versatile lure, and combined with that color, it's pretty doggone unstoppable. And we're actually, we're trying to set this world record, and I believe we're already there in terms of one paddle tail, one swim bait, and one color catching that many species. And we actually applied with Guinness World Records. I mean, I've been back and forth with them. And the bad news is, the only way to truly get a world record for Guinness, obviously you can, find some other world record, but Guinness is the big one. It does cost a pretty good chunk of change, $800 or more. It's kind of starts there to even start the process, but you have to have a witness for the entire thing. And we don't. So what we're going to do, I know Luke and I have it on video. We're going to try to recreate this, is the most amount of species caught in a single day using the Slam Shady lure. And I think 11 is what we did that one. And we didn't even fish a full day. That was just the morning time.
That was like 3.5 hours. Yeah. So it was 11 different species, 3.5 hours. And again, it was just an illustration of the fact that any predator fish, right, they're going to eat bait fish. They're going to come up and suck this down.
Yeah.
The key though is rigging. So like
yes.
The retrieve is really basic. You just have to rig it for the conditions you're fishing. I saw a question come in from Donald asking when we're going to get the 1/16 ounce weights in. So this is the twist lock hook. This is the type of hook he's talking about. He's referencing the 1/16. And so we also have the 1/8. Our owner just recently came out with this 1/8 on the bottom. After testing them out, I now use this almost exclusively. Like, I now rarely go back to the 1/16. It keeps the bait down a little bit further, but not much. It still runs in the shallows, You can cast further though, which is huge, and you have more air on your rigging. So the fact that it's more weight down on the bottom, even if you don't rig it perfectly, it's not going to do the helicopter, which is going to be the number one way that you're not going to catch anything. The only con of using the bigger one is if I want to skip up under the mangroves, then I'll go to the lighter one just because it skips a little bit nicer. But otherwise, yeah, I would say, Donald, if you don't have the 1/8 ones, get them. 3/0 hook, 1/8 ounce weight is my new favorite rigging for these soft plastics in the 3 to 5 inch range.
And Mark, when do we have the new ones coming in on shop.saltstrong.com?
They should be here by July, right, Mark?
Yeah, they should be here by July, but owner did reach out and say that they are just dangerously low in quantity on all 3/0 hooks now, including the 1/8. And as many can understand, the pandemic, has really shut down production, for all manufacturers, not just owner hooks. So they're going to do their best to fulfill orders for us. So yes, grab them while you can, because the inventory is going to be very, very light on that. And another thing that Luke didn't mention, the reason why, and I'm not going to speak for him, but I think the reason why the 1/8 version is getting so popular for him is because naturally with a swim bait or paddle tail, the bait will naturally plane higher in the water column. So that added weight, that 1/8 ounce weight, will keep that swim bait paddle tail down into the column of water that you want to fish. So that's another kind of, I don't want to say a con to a 1/16 ounce, but naturally that bait will lift that 1/16 ounce really, really high into the water column. So if you do want to get down, 1.5 to 2.5 feet, that 1/8 is the version to go with.
Mark, Gregory Ramco says, one of your hosts are revolting by not wearing a Salt Strong hat. Oh my goodness.
Doesn't count.
Unbelievable. Thank you, Gregory, for pointing that out.
Yeah, I saw another question I was just about to field. He asked, and Greg, thanks for all the questions, asked if the inline hooks have ever straightened out. So far, the answer is no, but I've been using just 10-pound line. So I did that big red I caught last week. It was the 34-inch redfish. It hit near some pilings, like literally like right in between two pilings. They're about 5 feet away, and it hit right in the middle. So I cranked the drag down, and where is it? Yeah, so the front hook wasn't straightened out, but it definitely came out to about here. I just got some pliers and put it back. So I probably that was my 10-pound line to the FG knot to a 30-pound leader. The breaking strength is it's like 22 pounds. It's like 20 to 21 pounds on my latest testing. And so I probably had maybe 15 pounds of pressure on it just to get it away from those pilings. So it didn't straighten out. It came close, but it didn't straighten out. And if I was on an open flat, I never would have put nearly that much pressure on. Statistically, you're supposed to have like 25% of your weakest line's breaking point for your drag setting. So in most cases, there'll be no risk. But if you're using stronger line and you're fishing and you're having to pull fish out of cover, then you might want to get some of the thicker. I'm sure they make hooks of different sizes, or I guess different thicknesses. Mark, you could probably.
Yeah, they actually do make a 3X gauge wire. But if you look at it though, Luke, the standard gauge that you currently have, that's actually still a thicker gauge than what most trebles are. So if it's not going to straighten out a treble, then it's certainly not going to straighten out that straight. It depends on the heat that you're putting on the lure, with the drag setting. But if you're fishing the drag the proper way, you'll never straighten out that hook.
Yeah, because I've caught overslot snook, so I've caught mid 30-inch snook on these baits as well, and no issues. And again, but if you're just totally maxing it down, obviously any knot will straighten out, as Mark said. Obviously, most trebles that come from factory on baits, they're going to be weaker than these. But again, regardless if you're using the factory trebles or these inlines, as long as you're not just putting an absolute ton of pressure, there should be no problem.
Someone also asked, where is Tony? Tony is out on the water right now doing some filming. So he's actually filming his insider report. Every week we go try new spots, and film the entire thing from where we launched, where all the fish were caught, what kind of trends that we saw, and we post that every week for our members. So Tony is out on the water and probably doing some other how-to tips as well. So don't think that we purposely left Tony out. The dude is on the content train today. Wyatt, what else you got, dude? What's kind of been your go-to besides the obvious slam shady baby?
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of lure testing myself. The two lures that I tested recently that surprised me, the number one was the Redfish Magic. We've had some terrible storms in the Carolinas, and we've already got dirty water. I know you guys down in the Gulf just experienced a really bad storm, so this might be a lure you want to add to your tackle box for this upcoming weekend. But the Redfish Magic is basically just a paddle tail. This is actually one, I took the blade off of this one because it got a little bit rusted. But basically, it's just a paddle tail, a white paddle tail on a 1/8 ounce jig head, and it's got a spinner blade above it. It's a really nice, thick Colorado blade that's got some good thump to it when you pull it through the water. And if you just give it a really slow, constant retrieve, near some oyster bars or some structure. I fish near a point, oyster bars, grass, things like that. I picked up trout and flounder, and I'm sure if there had been redfish nearby, the Redfish Magic would have earned its name. But it was a lure that really surprised me. In really dirty water, after a storm when it's really windy, something that's got a lot of presence was really performing much better than, just a straight jig on a straight paddle tail on a jig head. Another lure that I tested, my favorite topwater, just so you guys know, is the skitter walk, the Rapala skitter walk. But it's possibly going to get beaten by a new topwater that I've been using, the MirrOlure Top Dog and Top Pup. Now, I've done a review on these, but just kind of give you guys a quick crash course. The Top Dog is, I would say, akin mostly to the skitter walk. And the Top Pup is a little bit smaller, for earlier in the morning when it's a little bit calmer. But Mark was talking earlier about rattles. The Top Dog, I would argue, has the best rattle, on the market. I'll let you guys listen to it right now. And it's really nice for, fishing that dirty water, because those fish, they're not hunting by sight. They're feeling. So you're pulling that top water through the water. And if it's got a nice sound to it, like, listen, got a nice sound to it like that, that's going to really help them hone in on that bait. And just, walking the dog right down a grass line really has been super effective. I mean, you can see on this Top Pup, I've got a scale from the last trout that I hooked into. Unfortunately, was not able to land him, but these lures have been working great for me. But if I had to, choose one, obviously I'm going to go with a paddle tail and a jig head. It's just the most versatile. I can fish it, finesse, and I can speed it up if I'm finding that the fish are more aggressive. So that paddle tail on jig head is going to be my all around. If I'm, fishing shallow water, the Alabama Leprechaun, really hard to beat. I'm using that on a Texas eye jig head because, I've got oysters, but I also, I'm trying to move it through the water really quickly, or I'm trying to cast really long distances. So Texas eye jig heads, you get the weight of a jig head, but also the weedlessness of, one of the twist locks. So that's what I've been using. It's been working really well. And I would say another thing that you can start to use, and this is one of the most popular lures that we talk about in the insider community that I hear insiders talk about, is a popping cork. Now is the time to start breaking those out. You can put paddle tails on, what I've had a lot of success with. Usually I'm using them in really dirty water. Like I said, those fish are hunting by not sight, but by feeling the vibrations and by sounds. So I'll put a, gulp shrimp or a DOA shrimp under a popping cork. With just a little bit of leader, just enough to keep it right off the bottom, and start popping it near those grass lines, especially on like a low tide when you've got a really good pocket of concentrated fish. They're going to get aggressive. They're trying to feed before the others can get to it. So popping that cork, you've got a shrimp or a paddle tail on the bottom. Those fish are going to get super aggressive, and it can be really fun for kids because they love watching that cork. But it's also fun for someone my age to sit there and watch as well.
Ain't no use if there's no chartreuse. I like that chartreuse tail, baby. Woo!
Correct.
Wyatt, you're definitely a real fisherman. It kills fishermen when you get that amazing strike. You're fighting the fish and you're by yourself and no one saw it. You have no picture. And what does Wyatt do? He keeps the one little scale from the trout just to prove that he had a fish.
I
That
have
was
a video. The
That
video
was
is
like
in that.
3 weeks
that
ago,
review.
Wyatt. I remember you posted that video right after you did it for the insider members. That was at least 3 weeks ago, maybe 4, and the scale's still there.
Yeah, I haven't. I don't know if I'm ever going to take it off. I'm going to have to wait till I catch another fish. This lure right now is cursed for me. I don't even want to put it back in the water. But I kid. I will take it back out again soon. But these top waters are fantastic, and they cost a little bit less than some of the other. I think only the Heddons are cheaper than them. So pretty good top water in my opinion.
Yeah, and what I found in particular, that I'll give a little bit of the results from that test when I did the skitter walk versus the Super Spook Junior. So on the rattle, on the vibration side, this seems to be so far in testing, this has been the conclusion, the pretty consistent finding is that I was doing 3 casts for multiple trips, and both of them caught fish, but this one consistently caught more fish when the water was calm. So the calmer the conditions, I caught more fish with the Super Spook Junior, which has a little bit lighter rattle, than I did with the skitter walk, which has a more of a deep rattle. As soon as that wind was ripping, or if I was fishing wind prone shoreline, this outperformed the Super Spook. Again, not a single day happened where I didn't catch, where I caught fish on one and not the other. I caught slams most days on both of them, but they both caught fish. But if you want to just maximize your results, think about the conditions you're fishing and then apply the vibration to that. So the macro level view is the darker the water is, I guess the more murky the water is, the more churned up the water is, right? The less the fish can see, they're going to be relying on vibration more than they would otherwise. So if it's super calm, clear water, I don't use any rattles. That's when I go, and I did that post last week. Calm and clear conditions, this is all I use, because in many cases you can kind of overstimulate. It's just too noisy. But I don't use that if it's rough or murky or churned up. And so just think about that when you're doing your selections. Is the vibration in many cases will help the fish find it in dark water when they can't see very well. But it can be a negative on calm, clear water when it's over, nothing naturally would be close to that noisy. So it'll kind of freak them out. So far that's been the conclusions. More tests coming soon, of course, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
Good stuff. Someone hit Scott here. I like the Z-Man Jig Head Z with the 2 prongs. Are you getting more of those in? Do we have those still? Those are the two prong ones. What are they called? The trapper keeper thingy.
Oh yeah. No, we're not getting those. So they work pretty good with Z-Man material. They don't work at all with non-Z-Man material. It's called the Easy Keeper.
I was thinking Trapper Keeper from high school, but you're right.
Not Trapper Keeper, and not selecting your homework stuff. But it's called the Easy Keeper. Yes, they do work. If you're using only Z-Man, what works better is the chin lock. It's basically, I don't think I might be able to find one, but there's a chin lock hook, which just has a ridge at the top, and you can catch unlimited amount of fish on the Z-Mans. I don't like it for non-Z-Mans, but if you're only using Z-Mans, the chin lock, look that thing up. Mark, what's the other one? There's a new one from Z-Man. It's like the chin lock, but there's something else.
I don't remember what they call their peg, because they have a peg on one. I don't remember the name of that new one.
Well, that's the same peg they use on the Texas Eye one too, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's similar. It's like a Texas Eye, but
they call it peg leg, I believe. Peg leg Z.
So here it is. So I always have these on me. Again, if I'm only using Z-Mans, I'm using this. So you can see, I'll put it in front of my shirt. So you can see that little peg at the top. That'll basically keep the material there. And that's Z-Man, you can just have just a little bit of material, and you can catch an absolute ton of fish. But with non-Z-Mans, this is going to tear the soft plastic. And so I don't use these for non-Z-Mans because it'll decrease the amount of fish I can catch. And so in that case, I use the owner twist locks. Let me pull one out here so you can see it. Yeah, so here's the twist lock, right? Where it's like the traditional pin. So you screw it in, and this will maximize the amount of fish you catch per bait for non-Z-Mans. It works pretty good with Z-Mans still. But so this is my all-round, which I normally switch back and forth. But if I'm only using Z-Mans, I do this type, the pin. But they all work. So
Yeah. And I believe, the story was that Z-Man and I believe Mustad were going to do a collaboration. I could be wrong on the two brands, but Mustad ended up doing their own version, which was the grip pin, which was kind of released on the freshwater market. So the KVD grip pins and that kind of stuff was kind of that bait retention wedge, that kind of held all the baits on the hook well. And then years later, Z-Man decided to go ahead and release the chin lock style hook because they had it in inventory and they just sat on it for years. But that was originally supposed to be a collaboration with another major hook company.
Interesting.
good intel. Yeah, why? I see a question for you. It's about going back to the beginning. Why use a small toothpick float when using fish bites?
Gotcha. Yeah. So the reason I use these floats, when you're using, there's tons of different names for this rig. I call it a Pompano rig. It's just 3 hooks that are on a backbone of mainline, like a 30-pound fluorocarbon or monofilament. And when you have those 3 hooks, they're sitting in line like this. If there's no float on them, what's going to happen? I wish I had a rig in front of me to show you guys. Like you can buy these at the store. You can see these don't have floats. So what's going to happen with these? I can pull it out and show you guys. But basically, without the floats, as it's sitting in the water, the hooks are going to probably, with the current, wrap around that main line. And if you have the floats, it's going to keep them off the bottom, which you're not going to catch as many catfish. We don't have that problem here in North Carolina. I feel bad for you guys down in Florida, but we still have,
don't feel too bad. We're catching a lot of fish, buddy.
But you can see naturally sitting in the water, they would go down like this. I don't make my, outline this far, but with no float, it'll just go down and it'll likely wrap around your main line. If you put a float on here, what it's going to do is it's going to float out like that. The weight of the hook and the weight of the fish bites is going to pull it down. So it'll sit, in that middle range right out away from your main line. So as it's, rigged out on the weight, you need this float to keep it out. So it doesn't really matter what color you use. I like, the chartreuse, as Joe said, if it ain't chartreuse, it ain't no use. But it's really up to you. The color doesn't matter very much. It's the function of it keeping it out away from the main line that's really, really important. So it doesn't, wrap up on the backbone.
Where do you put in the Procure, Wyatt?
No Procure. No Procure at all. You don't need Procure with fish bites.
Had to throw that in there.
Another question that came in is from Daniel Cruz, and thanks for posting the question. It's about the actual color, so the lure color. He lives in over in Freeport area, over in Texas, and so the water is darker, like dark brackish water. And so, what color would you suggest? So color, I mean, yes, it matters. What I found is white, like a white lure is really my go-to. In most cases, the spot you're fishing, if you're not catching something, it's because you're not in a good spot versus you don't have the perfect color for the perfect situation. So I use Slam Shady, which is pretty much a white color with a little bit of flash in there. And I've been using it in clear water. I'm using it in dark water. I was over in Pine Island last September when like Irma came through, and it washed out all that the Peace River water into the harbor itself. So it was like dark, like tannic or just stained water, really dark. And I caught one of the biggest snook, or the biggest snook of the year, on a Slam Shady paddle tail in that really dark water. And just a week before, I was fishing that same spot, and the water was crystal clear, and I was catching snook and redfish on it as well. So it's more about the spot you're fishing. Spend way more time worrying about that and not nearly as much time on the color. Just get a color that you know, like, and trust. A lot of it's mental. And then go out there and fish and focus on the actual spot. Sometimes darker. Sometimes I do match the dark. I at least used to always match the darker lure to the darker colors. But after just using the white in all conditions, then I really haven't seen a decrease in strikes.
And there is a science behind it, which is why we developed Slam Shady. And this book, which was written by an eye doctor who's also an avid angler, and basically has spent his life studying optics. And there's an entire chapter called long distance color shifts. And this is critical the clearer the water is. Now, if you're up maybe Wyatt or in Texas, you know, where it's just completely brown, this still plays a role, but it's not as critical. But anywhere that you can see your lure in the water, a fish can see it. And he starts the whole book off talking about watching a specific fish, you know, is basically sees this lure from 10, 15 feet away, is coming up to it like it's on it. And all of a sudden it noses up to the lure and like gets really close, not nosing up like sniffing, it gets like really close and then like gets spooked and takes off. And, you know, it's happened to all of us, right? Where we've had a fish that's like, it's zoned in on our lure, and all of a sudden it boom, it almost like it spooks off, but you don't think it saw you yet. And he talks about this long distance color shift, and white is the only color that does not do that, is the only color that blends in with the water you're fishing in, just like a bait fish. And that's the reason we came up with slam shading. Of course, just like, you know, the white baits and stuff that we have here in the Gulf Coast of Florida, really all over Florida, there's also that little silver kind of gold flash to it as well, which is why we added the silver and gold flash. But he talks about, like, a good example is if you had a red lure or even a lure with a lot of bright red, which is a popular jig head color. It's a popular color to have on a lure, and red is completely pitch black from further away. And especially for like redfish and trout have trouble seeing red at all. And so all of a sudden they see red. Can you imagine being 15, 20 feet away from something and running up to it? And all of a sudden, like, boom, the color completely shifts. So it goes from black to red within inches of their face, and it spooks them. Like, that's not natural at all. And that was like an eye-opening moment when I read this. And same with Luke, like, holy smokes, you imagine how many times we might have lost fish because we had the wrong lure color. I will agree with Luke, though, all this stuff, it's really cool, and I love the science piece of it, but none of it, you know, it even compares to being in the right spot at the right time, which is what we teach in the Insider Club. Because there are also many times where you could be using 15 different lures and still catch fish if you're in a feeding zone, which is really the toughest part, right? It ain't tough to go buy a bunch of lures. It's tough to put yourself on the fish day in and day out, which, once again, that's why we created the Insider Club, to share what's working right now, to put you in the right spot at the right time. I wanted to share that because it was so interesting. The first time I read it, I went and read the chapter again because I never heard of that, about literally lure colors completely changing. And basically what we see in a tackle store that looks really cool, and we're going to have our own tackle store at some point, our own theme park, and we'll be just as guilty as everyone else. But I mean, what you see in a tackle store with the human eyes is the complete opposite of what fish see. And it definitely changed everything for me when I've now read that book, you know, a couple times. So it's called What Fish See by Dr. Colin Kajiyama. And I'm trying to reach out to this dude. If anyone knows his information, trying to reach out to him to get him on the podcast. I think it'd be a really cool interview. What else, guys? I'm seeing Dart Spin. What's up, Charles? Sporting those AFCO shorts. You know it, dude. Come on, Gregory. I can always count on Gregory Amco to be on these things. Awesome.
With some witty comments, too. He's always a very good
Yes.
Another thing, too, about the guy that's in Texas, about spots and stuff like that, what Wyatt was talking about in his Carolina market, they fish very similar to one another because of their water clarity. I would certainly do exactly what Wyatt said and deploy a redfish magic or trout magic, something with a bladed scenario to that bait. I'll tell you, I've fished the Texas and Louisiana water many of years, lived there for a long time, and I tell you, they love a bladed bait out there.
Yeah, and even chatterbaits too. And the fact that we're getting summer, and as we get more into fall, when the bait fish are even bigger, that chatterbait has a bigger profile. And they're super weedless. So yeah, all those baited blades. I don't use them at all if the water's clear. So I don't use them very much over here, just because the water is generally like clear to moderately clear. But yeah, when we go over to like Louisiana, that's when I start using popping corks and like those things that just create a ton of vibration, a ton of noise, because the fish need it. Otherwise, I'll usually just use non-bladed stuff. But yeah, in that dark water, it can make a really big. So the vibration realm in that case is more important than the color. So back to that original question. So if you're fishing that dark water, just be very, very mindful to focus on non-visual stuff. So scent and vibration is more important in those conditions. Whereas clear water, sight is like number one. And having a lure that has really good action in the water trumps everything. So just be mindful, like the water clarity does matter. But the factor is less about the color, more about the motion and the vibration.
Yeah, the two colors that that have caught me the most fish here in the Carolinas in dirty water have been the Slam Shady color, like white baits work fine, but the flash and the gold and the silver in the Slam Shady has caught me so many flounder, so many redfish, so many trout.
And you have scent on the 2.0 and the 5-inch too.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah. And it's nice because, sometimes I'll rip the tail off or, in the winter, I know we're talking about summer lures, but in the winter when I wanted to imitate a shrimp, I just ripped the tail off and I caught some of my largest reds on those 2.0 Slam Shadies just by working it like it was a shrimp. But speaking of shrimp, if I'm going to use another color other than Slam Shady, it's going to be this root beer. If you can see, it's got the gold flecks, just like the Alabama Leprechaun does. I've not put as much time on the water with these lures as I have, with these gulps or the Slam Shadies. But this is my other color that I'll use in the dirty water is the root beer color. Works really well. And, chartreuse tail, it doesn't hurt. But those are the only two colors I use. Like I'm not going to mess with anything else. So there's no reason to. I know that those two colors work, so I'm not going to need to stray from them.
Ain't no use, no chartreuse, baby.
I knew that was coming.
I knew it. Wyatt, it was a conversation that Joe, myself, and Luke had the other day. That's what started the whole statement. I told him if he doesn't say that every time we go live on something, I'm going to think less of him. So it's going to be a constant.
I think Captain Mark Hollywood started that on one of his Jig Head videos that he did for us. Man, that guy's he's a hoot.
Yeah, we'll be fishing with him soon. And speaking of that, so Luke and I are going actually tonight, and we're going to be trying something new. So if you guys made it this far, you're going to get a little sneak peek. And these are shrimp, and I would love to know your favorite type of shrimp and color of shrimp. And there is an insider named Marcos. And if you guys are insiders and you're part of the community, you know who I'm talking about when I say Marcos. The dude and his wife put up some of the biggest snook and reds and trout. I mean, they're absolutely killing it. And this is their go-to lure. You can see that is where you put a little Procure in there in these holes. But this is what they're using. So Luke and I are heading out actually just in a couple of hours to go try to catch some monster snook and reds with them. But snook is really what they focus on. And apparently he and his wife, were training people and had like a TV show in Brazil. Like they're the real deal. So I'm really pumped to go fishing with them and test out some of these shrimp. They're made out of some funky material, like Z-Man type where it ain't ripping. So what do you think? You guys use much on the artificial shrimp?
Used to back in the day. I mean, it was big in Louisiana just because, of course, that's what they were feeding on. But I have to say my fishing has really developed into the paddle tail, swim bait style of bait. It's just such a versatile lure. And the shrimp, the retrieve is so much slower, than my style of fishing.
Yeah, I would say,
and I'll be interested to see how they're fishing these things on these massive jig heads and where they're fishing them. I mean, check out the size of that. Looks like something you'd be throwing off a pier. Could be interesting, isn't it, Lukey?
It'll be fun. Why? What were you saying about shrimp?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't use them as a search bait. Like Mark said, 90% of the time, I'm throwing a paddle tail. I'm trying to cover water. When I go out to new spots, pretty much every time I fish. So unless I know where there's going to be fish or I'm working in an area that's, very small, high probability, like a dock, which is a great place to fish this time of year, I'm not generally going to throw like these shrimp. But if I do know where the fish are, or I've started to, figure out where there's some activity, like a creek mouth, or I'm throwing on a dock, I'm just going to put one of these under, not at a dock. I wouldn't use a popping cork at a creek mouth maybe, but I'll generally just put these on a jig head and just jig them really slowly. But these and DOA shrimp is really all I'm going to use in the artificial shrimp department. I haven't dove too much further in. I know down in Florida, you guys Love those chase baits, jelly prawns. Tony has made tons of videos on those, and I know those are a great shrimp, but the water is a little bit murkier up here, and I don't think that level of detail is as necessary. I mean, if you've seen those DOA shrimp, I mean, it looks like they're not a very lifelike design. It looks like a 3-year-old design, but they work. So I have zero complaints there.
Yeah, and I'm the same way. So shrimp I don't use very often, and for the same reason Mark gave, I do more power fishing, I should say, where it's really about just covering water and just put into a numbers game. I know that if I can cover more water, I'm going to get a lure in front of fish, and as long as I do that, a certain percentage are going to strike. And in many cases, that'll catch more than going super slow in some areas that might not be good. And if you cover a lot of ground, that's going to increase the odds that you're going to find just a honey hole of feeding fish. And so I very rarely use shrimp lures, but one of my favorite lures, when I started watching it underwater, I started getting underwater footage of these lures. And although on land, like in a store, it looks like a bait fish, underwater, it looks identical to a shrimp getting scared and fleeing. And that is, the bait that we mentioned before.
Show me the go!
If you look at this split tail jerk bait, and if you look under the water with the double twitch retrieve, which in a post I showed, it's on there. Joe, when that post that's showing the leprechaun when that first day using it, I put some underwater footage in there. It's toward the end of the video. It's like a 3-minute video, but watch it because at the end it shows this lure bumping up out of the grass, 2 twitches, and then it slowly settles down. Even though, this doesn't have like shrimp legs and all that fancy stuff sticking out, the motion, like the actual action in the water, looks identical to a shrimp, which, goes backwards 2 times real fast and then flutters down. It looks identical to that. And so I think that's what the fish think they're hitting when they strike this in many cases, doing that double twitch retrieve. And so this lure, yes, it looks like a bait fish. So that one retrieve, the reason why I just love this type of lure is because a double twitch retrieve with this lure can mimic both a scared shrimp and an injured bait fish. So this is my go-to if the water is calm and clear, or even in the wintertime, I'm using this. And the only time I use shrimp lures is in the wintertime, and I'm fishing docks, and I know the fish are going to be close to the piling, so I can fish really slow. I'm not on an open flat where I really have to cover ground. I know the fish are going to be near the pilings, so I just pitch up into the pilings and bounce a shrimp on the bottom, rigged it on jig head. And that's really the only time that I find that I catch more fish with a shrimp lure than I do with either the paddle tail or the split tail.
But
this weekend today might change, or tomorrow
we're
might change.
always open to new ideas, which is why we're going down there to fish with them. I mean, they've proven it, just like Slam Shady has proven it works when you have it's well over 100,000 fish caught and over 64 species. They're putting up massive fish every single week. And it seems like 80% of the fish they catch are using, as Corinne said there, it looks like they're fishing really crazy, fast moving water, like in an inlet or something, but I don't think they are. I mean, knowing where we're going, I have no idea. So this is going to be a really interesting one. And they said they don't mind if we, bring the camera and film some how-to tips. So hopefully we'll be coming back with some really cool tips and some new ideas, maybe even some revolutionary ideas on ways to target these really big fish. And finally, on that, a lot of you on Instagram have seen that we constantly repost this guy, Shark Fit Coco Beach. His name's Travis Anderson. And I don't even repost all the stuff he shares because it would like take up our entire feed. But that dude catches so many inshore slams that ain't even funny. And he's on a pontoon boat. He's literally on a pontoon boat with like no power pole, and he just uses the wind to push his pontoon boat. And all he uses 100%, especially right now, is that 5-inch Z-Man Slam Shady. So it's the Slam Shady Z-Man, and that's all he's using is skipping it up under mangroves if he's fishing real skinny, or just hitting the grass flats with a jig head. And that's all he uses. And he's like, man, right now, big baits. So we do have those in stores. They're those ones that are scented. They're big. We started this whole conversation off with big baits, and you can go see those at shop.saltstrong.com. We do have those in right now. And that's that Z-Man 5-inch Diesel Minnow Z and the Slam Shady color. You cannot buy those in stores. The big boys, and those are awesome. And that's same with Peter Deeks. Peter Deeks is one of our fishing coaches, and obviously we hook him up with whatever he needs. And I went out there last time with him, and I was like, what do you want me to bring? He's like, dude, don't bring anything but the 5-inchers. I want the big boys. And we'll put in the show notes to all this. If you guys haven't seen that video of him going out and catching those big bull reds and those big old black drum, those were all on that 5-inch slam shady on that big boy. So we're going to be working on some new stuff, let's just say, with Z-Man for this summer, some big baits and the slam shady color. Since it's proven to work, we're gonna go all in on that thing, just because we haven't found anything personally that's outperforming it. A lot of people have said, oh, this is better. Hey, we're testing out stuff all the time, which is why, this whole conversation and even just our YouTube channel, it's filled with new reviews of new products. Luke was just out, this past week testing out all these different topwater lures, just so we can give you guys exactly what's working, what is truly working right now. And then, of course, as we talked about, showing you where to go, which is the ultimate deal. Showing you where to go is first, meaning, being in that 90-10 zone, where 90% of the feeding fish are in 10% of any area, and then the right lure or bait to use to maximize your strikes. And that's all part of the Insider Club. And if you made it this far, either you're already a member, which I know a lot of you are, there's almost 14,000 people, or if you're not, come join us today. Risk-free, baby. And you get to spend a whole lot more time with us fun guys, talking tackle, getting on satellite maps, talking procures, and putting you on the fish, baby. Chartreuse!
Yeah, and it's really, and it's all about the type of spot. If you take anything out of this, just know that it's all about spot selection, and it's not about knowing a GPS spot. The biggest problem I see in just on social media is, hey, like, where'd you catch that? Like, hey, I'm gonna go fishing. I'm gonna go fishing in Tampa. Where should I fish? And if somebody gives you an answer if somebody gives you an answer on like, hey, where should I fish, without talking about when you should fish there, then don't listen to it, because it's very rare that a spot is good throughout all tide cycles, throughout all times of the day, and throughout all wind directions. So if you're not putting those factors, wind direction, wind speed, plus the tide cycle, plus the time of day, if you're not putting that to your game plan on why you fish a certain spot at a given time, then you're asking for non-consistent results. And so part of the Insider Club is that we focus on those details to share exactly what types of spots to go to under certain conditions or under certain times of day. So that's really the missing link that I had for many, many years. So again, if you have any takeaway, just know to not make that mistake where it's all about, hey, I caught a fish here last year, or a work colleague caught a giant redfish here, last year, let's go. And that'll most often result in disappointing results.
As Charles is on here, Charles Roberts, who's also very consistent, and he's seen this with some newer members, who come and don't really know what to expect, where we are teaching. We want to help big time, and a new member will come in and say, hey, I'm going to be fishing in this spot in 2 months from now, like on vacation, show me a spot. And to Luke's point, hey, let's talk about a little bit more about what the weather's going to be doing. What fish are you targeting, right? And I see so many people that we'll meet when we're out fishing, and they're having a tough time. Like, what are you targeting? Like, anything that'll bite. Well, no wonder you're not catching any fish. Like, have a game plan. And I know some of them are being just sarcastic, but there's many that aren't, that are just out there just putting a shrimp on a hook and popping cork and just hoping something will bite it. That's not really the smartest way to go about it if you really want to maximize your time and catch a lot of fish, which is what we're trying to fix with anyone who will listen and be part of our amazing club. And now with the addition of Mark, we have 20% off all of the best tackle. We're never going to have all the tackle, nor do we want that. I think that's also a disservice that the industry has done to fishermen, is having just too much stuff where it's one, overwhelming, and two, confusing, and three, a waste of money. Like, you don't need all of this stuff. You need stuff that works. And I've watched my brother, who is probably one of the most consistent anglers that I know, and I have watched him over the years have less and less stuff, even though he's got a lot of crap because he's testing stuff, meaning what he really fishes with is just getting simpler and simpler and simpler. And that's when you truly become great and have it dialed in. So one of our big goals of our shop page at shop.saltstrong.com is to just have the best, the stuff that truly works, and not have, just a bunch of stuff just to say we have it. So you're going to see some changes, as Mark talked about, on our store, of just kind of whittling it down. And of course, some of it, we're going to might be out of stuff because of all this coronavirus, and it's happening to Bass Pro. It's happening to everyone. They're having to deal with the same stuff that we are. But more importantly, we're just going to focus on the stuff that truly does work and is the best value, that saves you money. And of course, if you're an insider member, 20% off everything in the store. So I think it is time to wrap it up. Yeah, it's man, we went overtime. That was fun. We can do a whole nother episode on this one.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a big topic. And there's so many different lures out there. It's insane. And as Joe said, yeah, many times keep it simple, focus on the essentials, and then spot selection is #1 priority all the time.
Yep. And then once again, if you want to test out one of the ideal baits / lures, whatever you want to call it, go to shop.saltstrong.com and look at that 5-inch Z-Man Slam Shady. You cannot buy that in stores. Of course, you remember, you get 20% off. Those things are killing it right now. If you don't believe me, go over to Shark Fit Cocoa Beach on Instagram and check out his stories and his posts. Every fish, for the most part, on there. And actually, he had a couple topwaters recently, but almost every single fish is caught using that same lure. That dude has it dialed in on a pontoon boat. I don't believe it has a troll motor. I know it doesn't have a power pole, and he's just out there drifting the flats and stuff, tossing that bad boy out a mile and catching a ton of fish. So, guys,
let me add one more. So if you get that bait, it's about rigging too. If you're fishing the shallows, the 3/0 hook is too small. So the 3/0 hook that we talked about earlier is too small for that bait. Although it is 5 inches, it has a thicker middle. So in that case, you need a little bit bigger hook. So this is the 4/0 owner hook with the 1/8 ounce weight on there. This is exactly what I caught my biggest snook on last year. And that was when I was, I mentioned before, that dark water. So 3/0 hook too small, 4/0 hook ideal, 5/0 hook works too.
Yep. And of course, Jig Head, same kind of deal. Got them all, baby. All right, guys, this has been fun. If you're not a member, check us out, saltstrong.com. We would love to have you with all the other fish fans, and really has become just a tight-knit community. Awesome people. No cursing, no negativity, no making fun of people. It's just anglers helping anglers. And it's like having fishing guides in your back pocket, because we're all helping. So we're going to go hit the community now, and Luke and I are going to go hit the road. And hopefully you guys will see some cool snook pics, weather permitting, and all that other great stuff with these nasty, gnarly summer storms that are starting to roll in every day. Jeepers. You guys getting those up there too, Wyatt?
And we've had 3 tropical storms like back to back to back. It's been awful.
Yeah, they've had a ton of rain and wind up there. So you guys are due for a break as well.
Cool. All right, guys. We be out. Peace.